Hey everyone, this is a sneak peek for the next big video about Steven Universe. I mentioned last year that I was working on a sort of post-mortem video for the series, for when it actually ended. As it turned out, I had so much to talk about that it was completely reworked into a massive deconstruction of the problems the series has. More to that, I abandoned the idea of waiting for the series to end on the simple fact that there were so many problems and such glaring oversights on Rebecca Sugar's part that no matter how supposedly good the ending might be, it will not make up for how much time and potential Sugar wasted in getting to that point, even though it's very likely that critically undiscerning fans will see it end and go, "Nobody makes everything good now." That kind of storytelling should be heavily discouraged. Steven Universe has a large number of broad sweeping problems and extremely problematic issues that seem to go completely unnoticed by Sugar, and many of them reflect extremely badly on Sugar as a person and not just a writer, and it's likely that she will bullshit another supposed shocking twist in an attempt to retroactively justify everything, and if she's allowed to get away with that, many other writers are likely to follow suit, so it's crucial that this not be accepted. Anyway, that's all for this rambling prelude. Please enjoy this sneak peek. The full video will be out in December at the latest and the end of August at the earliest. Thank you for watching. I've gotten something of a reputation in the past for shitting on serialization, and I need to make it clear that I don't necessarily hate serialization itself. I hate the prevailing attitude that serialization is objectively superior to episodic storytelling in every possible scenario. Like any other narrative tool, serialization works very well when it's appropriate to the story. It's very easy to just say that shows with a continuous overarching plot are always better than a monster of the week, but that's just flat out not true, and it's most evident in shows that try to have it both ways. But regardless of what narrative tool you decide to use for your show, you do have to pick one, and this is what seems to trip up Rebecca Sugar at every possible angle. Steven Universe has this long, overarching plot about the Crystal Gem War and Homeworld discovering they're still active and fucking with their plans. Now, for a while, the Crystal Gems and Homeworld plot was really interesting, and we'll get into why that fell down the plug hole in just a few minutes. But what was consistently aggravating is that Sugar clearly wanted to maintain a Monster of the Week vibe on top of that and focus on more character-specific elements like The Last Airbender did. Now, I can already hear you confused comments going, "But don't you love that shit, Lily?" Yes, I do. But there's a problem. You see, it wasn't character work for the characters you would think would get the time and focus. Steven? Connie? Pearl? Amethyst? Garnet? Peridot? Lapis? Nah, clearly nothing to do with any of them. Let's have 7 different episodes about why Lars is an unbelievable douche. Let's do 3 about Ronaldo being a conspiracy theorist. Let's do some about Mayor Dewey for some fucking reason. Ooh, I know, how about that one family that runs a pizza shop? I bet their lives are totally fucking interesting. What's that? Intergalactic fascism with a smattering of natural rule? Boring. Let's talk about the wrestling scene. That's where the real action's at. You see, the side stories in The Last Airbender were so good because they offered insight into a primary character. The Southern Raiders was about Katara getting revenge on the man that killed her mother. Zuko alone was about witnessing firsthand the damage that his father's warmongering has been causing on the Earth Kingdom. You know what The Last Airbender didn't have? An entire character arc for the Cabbage Guy. But that's what Steven Universe is doing. The residents of Beach City aren't active players in the thin veneer of a story that Steven Universe pretends to have. They're background characters. They're weirdly misshapen, constantly shrinking Lyras. They don't get proper character arcs because they show up, deal with the crisis of the day, and then go sit in the green room until Sugar wants to stall for time again. Literally the only one who does change is Lars, and that's because Sugar literally fucking killed him and replaced him with another character entirely. The rest of them are just there to distract from the fact that the story is dragging on and on and on. Normally filler is fine to flesh out the world and the other characters, but the world being fleshed out is Earth, which doesn't need fleshing out. The characters being explored are random bit parts who ultimately mean nothing, and they're not funny. Filler episodes of shows are usually the fun, light-hearted episodes the writers use to ease off the tension of the main story, if they have one. Steven Universe doesn't have that need for easing tension, as the filler episodes outnumber the story episodes considerably. It almost feels like Sugar wanted to have a story about an intergalactic space war, but also wanted to just write fanfics about random people in Beach City and couldn't seem to pick one. And for a while that worked for her. The fandom at the very least seemed to love all of this, and Steven Universe Circa Season 1 had an extremely critically undiscerning fanbase. But everything changed when the hiatus is attacked. Steven Universe schedule went off the rails almost immediately, airing regularly for a while but then condensing itself into short bursts of episodes called Steven Bombs. The first hiatus lasted for 41 days and started with the episode Bubble Buddies, the 7th episode of the series. The show had just started and it was already taking a break. The second lasted 3 weeks with Arcade Mania just 5 episodes later. The third lasted another 3 weeks, another 5 episodes later. Then they got progressively worse. The fourth 4th hiatus lasted just over 3 months and came back to Coach Steven just 5 episodes after the last hiatus came back, and then stuck around consistently for a few months before going on hiatus for another month. We're not even through season 1 yet, and already Steven Universe has been on hiatus for over 220 days. The 6th hiatus finally broke into season 2, lasting 45 days and returned to Sworn to the Sword. Then, only a week later, went on hiatus for another 3 weeks to come back to Cry for Help in Keystone Motel. Then a week later, starting to see the theme, went on hiatus for another 54 days and returned to Nightmare Hospital. Then the show managed to remain consistent for a little while before going on hiatus again for 80 days and coming back to The Answer. Once again, the show lasted for only another week before having the second longest hiatus of 5 months between then and Super Watermelon Island. Another 5 episodes, then it went on hiatus again for 44 more days, returning to the Summer of Steven, where the series managed to stay on air for the rest of the summer. Then the 12th hiatus came, lasting another 2 months and returned on Gem Harvest. The 13th hiatus lasted another 2 months, returning on Steven's Dream. Then another one that was just under 3 weeks, so I don't count it. Then the longest hiatus of 6 fucking months. And this was arguably the most egregious offender because the series left off on Lars dying and being revived and then left on Homeworld. And then we came back to a municipal election, Steven being pissy that Connie won't talk to him, Lapis panicking that Homeworld is coming to Earth and reminding everyone that there are fascists in space coming to kill them all, and Steven and the cool kids start a band. Then the show went on hiatus for another 3 months. Steven Universe spent so much time on hiatus that the waiting just continued to wear people down. I talked about this on the Clop Drawer podcast and Glass of Water. As the waiting dragged on and on and on, people started getting angry. Hiatuses happen in TV shows all the time, but Steven Universe has hiatuses in excess, and that kind of drawn-out waiting is unheard of. But here's where the biggest problem lies. If you binge watch the series now, everything seems fine. The filler episode's biggest problem in retrospect is just that they're boring, and most people would rather be told the cool story about space battles, not the boring story about some loudmouth brat who doesn't have any earlobes. But when you put it into the context of people waiting 6 months after leaving that kid on a hostile alien planet, only to come back and not even bother giving it a passing glance for multiple weeks, people are going to get angry because you're just jerking them around and wasting their goddamn time. The fact is, Steven Universe had ample time to appropriately put filler and just decided to fill it with nothing. Filler episodes exist so that you don't have to go on hiatus. Your story lasts 12 episodes, but they ordered 24, so you spread those story episodes out between fun filler episodes to pass the time and create organic gaps between story events. Steven Universe just has pauses and gaps in between that otherwise organic scheduling and throws everything off. When people hear that Steven Universe is coming back after 6 months, the last thing they're going to want to see is some episode about Mayor Dewey. We don't need a break from the story, we just fucking had one. This contributes to what many people see as a feeling that the story is stalling because it has these long stretches of nothing, then comes back to filler that should have been put in those gaps. If you believe that it's all Cartoon Network's doing for the constant hiatuses, which I don't, Sugar should have caught on to this a while ago and written her episodes accordingly. If you're constantly going on a hiatus, you don't need to make this kind of crap, but Sugar continued making it anyway. I don't even know why. Who goes through all that effort to make magical lesbian space rocks and then devotes so much fucking time to just average, ordinary, everyday humans? Are you telling me that all of the literally colorful characters in this show, your favorite is Lars? The guy doesn't have earlobes, Rebecca! The issue with filler is even worse when there's an active story arc going on. In the Cluster arc, a massive artificial fusion comprised of millions of gem shards, by the way, remember this is going to be important later, is discovered to be baking beneath the Earth's crust and will soon form and destroy the entire planet. I repeat, it will soon destroy the entire fucking planet. Now, in any other show, this kind of story would have a sense of urgency about it. Not in Steven Universe, however. The episodes Back to the Barn, Too Far, The Answer, Steven's Birthday, Message Received, and Log Date 7152 barely have anything to do with the actual story. They spend most of the time chilling and not really doing much. It's only Back to the Barn that in any way advances the story itself, and there's no reason why the other 3 couldn't have waited until after the cluster had been stopped. If you take the episodes that make up the cluster arc and rearrange them so the waffling happens after the cluster has been bubbled, this problem goes away. For something that threatens the Earth, the thing the Crystal Gems care about more than anything else, there's a distinct lack of actual tension in the story. Nobody's stressed out, nobody's worried. Wait, no, scratch that. Peridot's worried, but don't worry, we'll lobotomize her soon enough. For an arc supposedly about the cluster, I actually forgot it was even a thing on first viewing because several episodes and a 4-month hiatus went by without it getting a passing mention. After Malachite is defeated, the cluster starts to wake up and everyone's like, oh yeah, the cluster's a thing. Nearly every arc has this issue. The Jasper arc from Gem Hunt to Earthlings has Bismuth smacked in the middle of it. The Homeworld arc has Dewey wins, Gemcation, and Kevin Party wedged inside it. And the Pink Diamond arc that immediately follows has 5 episodes jammed between it before anything remotely resembling a conclusion starts to inch its way forward. The biggest contributor to this constant starting and stopping is the fact that Steven Universe plays out like any other cartoon, but unlike any other cartoon, it's lashed to Steven himself at all times. So while in theory, the plot tends to play out at a relatively realistic pace, all the important and interesting things are happening completely off screen. This is why there are so many episodes about Steven bumming around Beach City, why there are so many instances of random characters doing fuck all with Steven, why there are so many episodes where Steven is hanging out with some other gem only for the plot to come bursting through the wall, or a character's personal issues just jump right out of the blue. This is most egregious in Last One Out of Beach City, where the episode is entirely about Pearl seducing some human lady who looks like Rose, and also Steven is there. He's been shoved into the episode just because the show has mandated that he always be here, despite the fact that the episode would work just as well, if not better, if he wasn't hogging screen time. I need to stress that this is unusual for any TV show. TV shows are typically written in a full third-person perspective so that the focus can shift for a bit when necessary. Avatar has a ton of moments where the perspective shifts to Zuko and Iroh as early as the first episode, and even episodes where Aang isn't present at all. Fan-favorite episodes like Zuko Alone, Tales of Ba Sing Se, The Boiling Rock, The Southern Raiders, and 3/4 of Sozin's Comet wouldn't have happened if the series lashed itself to Aang the way Steven Universe lashed itself to Steven. We'd probably have more insight into the Diamonds as a whole if the show could just bother to tear itself away from Steven for even a second. Even episodes that technically don't feature Steven are either a story being told to him or feature a fusion that Steven inhabits. With this arbitrary restriction in place, a lot of interesting things happen completely off screen, which in terms of storytelling means it doesn't actually happen. Legend of Korra had this problem to an extent in its final season, where 95% of Kuvira's asshole dictator behavior happens off screen and is only ever vaguely alluded to. And a lot of people bought that laziness with, oh well, it happens off screen. That's not good enough. You have to show it to us. Steven Universe has so many characters that just sit there and do fucking nothing because Steven isn't around to see them. Lapis and Peridot are the two biggest examples, as they're locked in the barn at all times until Steven decides to visit them, at which point something actually happens. Lapis is actually one of many characters who has a lot of shit to work through, but can't actually do that in the vast majority of cases because Steven isn't there, so she's not allowed to do anything. As a result of this, Lapis comes off to many people as one of Sugar's dozens of attempts at woobifying absolutely terrible and reprehensible people, and we'll fucking get to that. But Lapis didn't have to be this way. If you replaced every single episode of Steven screwing around a beach city with some rando with episodes about the other gems, Lapis could have actually been a character. Peridot could contribute in some way. Amethyst might have been able to work through her insecurities more organically. Pearl might not have been such a crazy asshole. Garnet might not have been relegated to exposition about fusion and nothing else. An entire arc about Lapis becoming a better person and making a turnaround from the abusive fuckstick she used to be, that sounds a hell of a lot better than the 6 episodes trying to salvage Lars before Sugar just gave up, killed him off, and replaced him with Zaphod Beeblebrox. Sugar likes to put terrible people in leather pants so much, why not have someone actually grow and become better and earn that supposed redemption, rather than just stagnating for years until you just steal your girlfriend's shit and leave. Once again, another story about abuse that gets outclassed by Family Guy of all fucking things. The end result of this laser focus on Steven means that nothing is fucking happening. There are so many throwaway episodes you can just skip and not miss anything, where nothing interesting happens, none of the characters we actually like so much as show their faces, and nobody who matters actually grows or changes in any way. Steven Universe, because of this forced perspective, remains steadfast in its refusal to actually explore any of the ideas it presents. Instead, it offers hints. It gives hints that Lapis might have PTSD. It gives hints that Peridot might have self-worth issues. It gives hints of character development. This isn't good writing, it's lazy writing. The sad thing is it's lazy writing that works. When I did my video about Tempest Shadow, one of the most common attempts at a refutation from people was to accuse me of not being able to see hints of character development, and people speculating on what Tempest's life could have been. But I did see those hints of character development, and I did speculate on their potential, but I also rightfully concluded that because the movie didn't bother to do anything with that potential, then that potential was irrelevant. This is something most fandoms can't grasp, and why hinting at character development is the easy way out for a lot of shows. Steven Universe hints at something interesting about a character and just fucking leaves it there. The fandom picks it up and speculates, concocts elaborate theories that delve into layers of intrigue, and then concludes that because of all this speculation that Steven Universe is an amazing show. Do you see what's just happened though? Rebecca Sugar is getting all the credit and praise, but the fans are the ones doing all the real work. They're writing elaborate story ideas that the show will never even try to use, but she's getting all the credit for it. Steven Universe is providing little more than a collection of writing prompts and being heralded as an amazing and deep show just because a bunch of far more creative people can write 50 pages based off those prompts. The big twist of the show is that Rose is Pink Diamond, but that twist was guessed by the fandom the moment Pink Diamond's name was first mentioned, and I said at the time that the Rose is Pink Diamond theory was without a doubt the worst possible way to end that entire arc, which meant Sugar was definitely going to do it. Worse off, not only does Steven Universe rely on the fans to imagine a better show in its place, it actively mocks them for doing so. In the episode Lion 4 Alternate Ending, Steven spends an episode deconstructing Rose's tape and trying to find the answer to his purpose in life. This has been a common trend for fandom theory since the start of the show, namely, why did Rose give herself up to bring Steven into the world? Steven investigates as much as he can and finds a tape for Nora and spends the rest of the episode trying to discover who Nora is. Nora is just what Steven's name would have been if he was a girl, and the only reason he exists at all is just because Rose wanted a baby. Now you might be asking yourself, why did this need to be an entire episode that teased the viewer with something interesting, only to yank it out from under them at the last minute? Because fuck you, that's why. This episode's only defense for existing is, we need to remind people that they're special just the way they are. But anybody who actually needs to be reminded of that is going to need more solid ground than Steven Universe to tell them. This is the closest thing to a solid theme that Steven Universe even has. With the exception of characters that already have their shit together, almost every character arc is about learning to love yourself. But not loving yourself in the practical way, where you have aspirations and goals and work toward them while taking part in self-improvement and making sure you're a healthy and functional person. You know, what loving yourself actually means. We mean the internet version of loving yourself, where you're complacent, never put in any effort to solve your problems, mope until somebody coddles you and pretends you don't have problems in the first place, and give up the moment you're confronted with failure because acknowledging that you have things to work on isn't comfortable. You're already as good as you're ever going to be, says the Rebecca Sugar. Interestingly enough, the best characters in the show are the ones that don't do this. Connie aspires to be more than she currently is, works hard, and by the end of her effective character arc, she's able to fend off a fusion alone while Steven has another sulking fit. She's the most emotionally stable among the cast, which I know isn't a high bar to clear in the first place, but bear with me here, and frequently pulls everyone else out of danger. Bismuth was another character who aspired to be more than she was, so much so she longed to take that aspiration to Homeworld and liberate everyone, and for her initiative, she was labeled just as bad as the Diamonds by the show, a genocidal killer by the fandom, and then bubbled in what is still the most horrific act of intellectual carelessness by Sugar. This happens because the show just doesn't have any fucking writers. The show was entirely written by the storyboard team, who are prioritizing jokes and set pieces above everything else and trying to make the story bend around that. The entire arc about Lars going into space existed entirely because Sugar had this vision of Lars being a space captain and was determined to crowbar that shit in somewhere. All of this combined means the show is going fucking nowhere. Anytime something looks like it might happen, Sugar bullshits her way out of it. We're now on 5 seasons, but with only 2 seasons worth of actual content. There are so many people who've completely given up on Steven Universe, but are only persisting in watching it out of a need for closure for all this time they've invested. A need to see how it ends if it even does end. You can't build a show on pathological addiction, Sugar. You can't keep teasing people with clickbait titles only to turn out that the episode it's attached to is just more of people jerking around and not doing anything. It's so fucking boring.